Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and I wanted to do this video on the very strange death of Gareth Williams because I've seen an amazing amount of ridiculous theories on this crime coming from major media, coming from YouTube, just about every place. And I want to shed some real clear light and simplicity on this. So I'm going to look at did this gentleman who worked for MI6, was he murdered by the Russian Mafia, by the KGB, or is it just Occam's razor and something else? And I'm going to show you why it is Occam's razor and not some big spy assassination type thing. All right, so let me get into this. Before I do, welcome to the channel. Please do like and subscribe. Check my playlist for all the other videos I do on many cases. Okay, let's get to it. Just to read, I'll be reading a little bit from Wikipedia just because that's easy for me, and then I'll comment on the issues as I go through it. His name is Gareth Williams. He was a Welsh mathematician and junior analyst, and then he started working for MI6. And supposedly he decoded things, and he was working on, the claim is he's working on some kind of technology to interrupt money being moved from Russia to Europe, and that a lot of criminal enterprises involved therein. But just get this to your mind, not James Bond, all right? And people think that anybody who works for an agency is automatically some big-ass spy. Now, I live in near Washington, D.C. A lot of people in our area work for the CIA. They're not all spies. They do a lot of different kinds of things, analytical stuff, research stuff, whatever. But they're not spies in the sense that, you know, the opposition, whatever that opposition may be, whatever country, is going to come after them and eliminate them because they're a cog in the machine, not a separate person who is doing all kinds of things. So I think he's an employee of MI6 doing maybe some special work, but still not that he would be needed to take this guy down. So that's the first flaw in this whole theory that he was killed by the Russian Mafia or the KGB. All right, so he was found dead in suspicious circumstances in London on August 23rd, 2010, at a flat used to house security services staff. All right. There was an inquest. They found his death was, quote, unnatural and likely to have been criminally mediated. That was one opinion. That didn't help this whole theory, this whole spy theory thing at all. A subsequent Metropolitan Police reinvestigation concluded that Williams' death was probably an accident, which I'm more likely to go with. All right, so let's see. Let me tell you basically how his body was found, just so you understand that. They did a welfare check on him when he didn't show up at work. His naked, decomposing remains were found in the bath inside a red sports bag that was padlocked from the outside. So his body was in a hold all in the tub, and there was a little lock on it. You see here in this picture, and I'll show you this in a minute. How he maybe got into the bag and maybe locked it himself. And that was on the outside, it was locked. And then the key was underneath his body inside. So they never came up with much of anything DNA wise, fingerprint wise, not his, not anybody else's, just not much. They did have bunches of DNA around the flat. How much that means is questionable. They've never linked it to anybody or anything. But remember, many people come and go out of somebody's flat. And even the hold all, if you take a trip someplace and you take that with you and you chuck that on, at the airlines, and the airline people are going like this, God knows how much fingerprints or DNA could be on that bag, including even the lock thing, because it could have been locked when it was going onto an airplane and the person touched the lock. So basically they have no physical evidence to say that somebody else handled that particular bag. The other thing is very interesting. He was naked. He had no signs of any damage to his body, like he was in a fight or anything. There was no drugs or alcohol in his system either. So, but he ends up in this bag. One of the things that people wonder about and was made a big, huge deal is, could he have gotten into the bag himself, or had somebody needed to put him in there? Well, here's the picture. This was a demonstration that was done. This guy is trying to get into the bag. It's not an easy thing, let me tell you. And he does get in the bag. He does zip it up, and he's trying to get the lock done. And for a long time, there was said that it was impossible to do, but then they did prove it was possible. Not easy, not very easy, but possible. So, and I'll get to why I think it was possible and why that's exactly what he did, put himself in the bag and locked it up. But before I get to the Occam's razor theory, let's take a look one more time at the spy theory. That they wanted to take him out because he was doing something to Russia, their criminal enterprises, and interfering, and they wanted to eliminate him. As I said, first of all, it's pretty much nonsensical because somebody else can do the job as well. So they just got to knock everybody off in that whole division of MI6. But let's say they did want to get rid of him. The last thing you want to do is bring massive attention to the actual crime. So you're not going to go in there, you pull out a gun, say, take all your clothes off, dude. Get in. Here's a bag. Get into it. Take the bag to the bathtub. Tell him to get into the bag and have him squash around. And he's not going to have any damage, mind you, while he's doing any of this. He's just going to peacefully do it for you. Then you're going to zip him up and lock him in and walk away. And meanwhile, he's not, you're not going to see any signs of him clawing to get out, ripping his hands up or whatever. None of it. But you're gonna make the guy get naked, get in a bag, and lock him up. And then you're going to expect there isn't going to be a huge police investigation over this bizarreness, that it isn't going to be all over the media. And what's the point? What's the point? If you just wanted to eliminate him, just eliminate him. Do it the simple way. One way is just simply just shoot him down someplace. He's walking along, just shoot him. Simple assassination. Untraceable gun, disappear back to Russia. Or the old street robbery. He's walking down the street, you stab him, then you take his wallet, and it looks like a robbery gone wrong. That's simple. You don't go into somebody's flat and make them take their clothes off and get in a hold-all, and it's just so stupid, it's ridiculous. So they're not going to do that. And if you say, oh, but they wanted to give a message out. A message to whom? Like MI6 is going to stop their operations because one of their people ended up in a bag in the bathtub? I hardly think so. It's not going to influence unless you specifically send a message that says we're doing this because of this. Then you might pay attention to it. There's no messages that came in, no information on this. It's not like a terrorist attack where they said, we take responsibility for blowing up a train or blowing up a building. So we want you to stop politically what you're doing. That's not like that. So the concept that there was any reason to kill him, one, that two, they would kill him in this way, two, it's ridiculous. And three, it wouldn't have made any dang difference. So it's a stupid theory. And it bugs me that so many people are pushing this and constantly pushing, I guess because it's exciting and you get way more views on your YouTube channel. And for regular media, the major media, they just want to put out another story and have everybody read and go, oh my God, maybe so. Okay, so let's go to the Occam's theory. Okay, let's see what else about him. Now, I want to read this part because I think it's amusing. What they found out about his private life. Okay, here's the part I wanted to read specifically. Let's see. The coroner rejected suicide, interest in bondage or cross-dressing, or autoerotic activity being involved in Williams' death. This coroner is an idiot. Coroner, first of all, I don't know why you would. How do you eliminate that? You're a coroner. You're doing forensic pathology, not coming up with the motive behind his death, the manner of death. She said his visits to bondage websites only occurred intermittently and were not of frequency to indicate an active interest. Okay. They said elsewhere an obsession. You didn't have an obsession. All right. If you visit even intermittently bondage websites that you're on for half an hour to an hour, this is not exactly the most normal sexual behavior of sexual interest, especially if the bondage isn't other persons but yourself, and the escapology thing can be very sexual as well as a paraphilia, where you get sexually off by putting yourself in a situation where you can't get out of. And that's exciting to some people. The fact that he visited these sites, it's not your average male's choice of pornography, shall we say. So he's doing this for a reason, because he has a specific fetish that he's into. Now, I don't know what they mean by sporadically or intermittently. I don't know how often they actually, if they're just, lessening how many times he actually visited, or he had other ways of visiting the sites from some other methodology besides that one computer or whatever. But also, along with this, one day his landlady heard screams of help from his flat, and she went in and found he had tied himself to the bed and couldn't get out. I would say that links pretty well to the bondage sites. So he not only looks at it, he is enacting the things that he sees. So I would call that an obsession. It's a very, if he's going to go through with action, then it's more than just a curious, I looked at it and thought it was interesting or weird. Because, sometimes that does happen. Somebody's flipping through some site and they come across something, go, oh my God, people do that, and they might look at it. Okay, that's true. But the fact that he acted out something from bondage sites shows me that's what he was into. They also found some interesting things in his flat. They found a wig, a female wig. They found $20,000, I think it was something like $20,000 worth of female clothing. Also not usual things you'd find in a single male's apartment. Okay, so what part is that? Part of his fetish is dressing up in female clothing, cross-dressing, which is his right to do so. But it does mean he had certain interests that makes what happened in his death make sense. So now we have a guy who really is into bondage and the bonding of himself, not somebody else. And he has now decided to do what I consider, I've seen it before in other cases, where he wants to get into this place and see what it's like to be in there. That somehow gives him a thrill. And he gets in there and he manages because, and I like the obsession part at this point that they're denying existed. If you put yourself in this thing and want to lock yourself in because you think it's, that gives you that thrill, you have to be obsessed enough to be able to do it. Now, we don't know if this is the only time he's ever done that. We just know that this is the last time he could have done that because he's dead. But he might have tried it in different ways before. He might have, and he's may have practiced it because it was something he was really into. And so this time he succeeded in locking it. The key is inside. Again, I don't think Mr. KGB guy or Russian Mafia dude is then, after he locks him in, is going to chuck in the key. Why bother? I guess it's to throw the police off to thinking he did it himself. All right, we could go there, but it's still silly. He had the key inside. The key was obviously intention was that once he got it locked, it wasn't going to be that hard to unlock it. Now, it seemed like he might have had some airspace, but he may have estimated how quickly he would die in there because he just may not have gotten out in time in order to get enough oxygen and passed out. And that was it. So people make stupid mistakes when they do these kind of things. We see the same thing with autoerotic sex, where somebody says, "Oh, I'm gonna, put this belt around my neck. Got my porn magazine here. I'm gonna have a good time." And what that does with autoerotic sex is it presses here, and it causes you to get a high, lack of oxygen, and that can increase orgasm. And what happens is if they do this enough, one day it takes them too long, and then they pass out. And once they pass out, they're hanging, and they can't get back up again. Even if their knees, even if they're not, their knees are close to the ground. Even they're just so passed out that they can't do this anymore. Many times, the family will come in and say he was murdered. I said, no, he wasn't murdered. He was doing autoerotic sex, and it went badly. I think this is a similar situation. Family doesn't want to believe it because maybe they didn't know their son had these inclinations. It's kind of an embarrassing death. And a lot of parents, when their children take their lives or foolishly end up dead doing something like this, they can't accept it. And so they will forever believe that their child was murdered. And they will carry on for decades saying that. And I've worked on cases where I've made it very clear to them exactly how their child died, and it wasn't murder. And then they just tell me to go away, and they go find somebody else to support their viewpoint. In this case, they got lucky, the family, because there's so many people out there who do want to support this concept, this ridiculous murder by KGB. That it's really, their family is probably pretty pleased about that. But I feel sorry for the family because no one wants to lose their child, and no one wants to lose their child like this. And I understand their grief over it. But the theory that he was taken out by the Russian Mafia is ludicrous. And Occam's razor wins the day because all the evidence points to he did it himself. So those are my thoughts on this. I hope it helps clear up for some of you who've been on these other channels who are pushing the Russian Mafia murder theory. Get that out of your head because it's just nonsense. So anyway, thank you for being here. Again, if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.